The crack of lightning split the sky so violently that Tanner Jenkins felt it in his bones before he heard the thunder that followed. And in that brief flash of white light illuminating the cabin's single room, he saw her an orc woman, soaked to the bone, her green skin gleaming with rainwater, standing just inside his doorway with her hand still on the latch, and her dark eyes locked on him with an intensity that made his breath catch in his throat. She was tall, nearly as tall as he was, with broad shoulders and muscular arms that spoke of hard labor or combat training. Her black hair hung in wet ropes past her shoulders, and two small tusks curved up from her lower jaw, giving her an exotic beauty that caught him completely off guard. She wore leather armor that had seen better days, torn in places and missing pieces, and her left arm hung awkwardly at her side, blood mixing with rainwater and dripping onto his wooden floor. Tanner had been a soldier once, 5 years ago, before he had mustered out and claimed this homestead in the frontier territories, where the human settlements met the wildlands that belonged to the orc clans. He had learned to read situations quickly, to assess threats and make split-second decisions. But this woman, dripping on his threshold with pain etched across her angular features, did not move like someone preparing to attack. She swayed slightly, catching herself against the doorframe. "Please," she said, her voice rough and accented but clear. "I need." Another crash of thunder shook the cabin so hard that dust fell from the rafters, and the woman stumbled forward. Tanner moved on instinct, crossing the space between them to catch her before she fell. Her weight surprised him. She was solid muscle, heavier than he expected, but he managed to guide her toward the rough-hewn table that served as his dining space and workspace. "Easy," he said, his soldier's training kicking in as he assessed her injuries. The wound on her arm was deep, probably from a blade, and there were burns on her shoulder that looked like they came from some kind of magical attack. "Sit down before you fall down." She allowed him to help her into the chair, but her dark eyes never left his face, watching him with a wariness that spoke of someone who had learned not to trust easily. Outside, the storm raged on, rain hammering against the cabin's walls with such force that Tanner could barely hear himself think. "Who did this to you?" he asked, moving to his shelves where he kept his medical supplies. They were basic bandages, some herbs for infection, needle and thread for stitching wounds, but he had learned field medicine in the army, and he knew how to treat common injuries. "Bounty hunters," she said, the words coming out between clenched teeth as she tried to control the pain. "Human ones. They attacked our trade caravan 3 days ago, killed the others. I ran." Tanner froze for a moment, his hand hovering over the basket of clean cloth he used for bandages. Bounty hunters. There had been rumors in the nearby town of Millbrook about men who hunted orcs for sport, claiming they were collecting on old bounties from the war. The war had ended 8 years ago, but some men could not let go of their hatred. "Let me see that arm," he said, pushing away his own complicated feelings about orcs and focusing on the immediate problem. A wounded person was a wounded person, regardless of their race. His mother had taught him that before she died, back when he was just a boy. The orc woman hesitated, then slowly extended her injured arm toward him. Up close, he could see that the wound was even worse than he had thought. The blade had cut deep into the muscle, and the edges were ragged. It would need stitches and probably a poultice to prevent infection. "This is going to hurt," he warned her, dipping a clean cloth into the bucket of water he kept by the hearth. The fire had burned low, just embers now, and the cabin was growing cold despite the summer storm outside. "Pain is familiar," she said, a bitter edge to her voice. "Do what you must." Tanner cleaned the wound as gently as he could, but he felt her tense beneath his hands, her muscles going rigid as she fought not to cry out. He worked quickly and efficiently, the way he had learned in the army when treating wounded comrades in the field. The burns on her shoulder were more complicated. They had an oily residue that suggested alchemical fire, the kind that kept burning even in rain. "I have something for burns," he said, reaching for a small clay jar on the highest shelf. His friend Marcus, who lived 2 homesteads over, kept bees and made a salve from honey and certain herbs that worked wonders on burns. "This will help." As he applied the salve, he became acutely aware of how close he was to her. Close enough to see the fine details of her face, the way her eyes were not just dark, but actually a deep amber color, the small scar that crossed her left eyebrow, the delicate point of her ears that showed beneath her wet hair. She smelled like rain and smoke and something else, something earthy and alive that reminded him of the forest after a storm. Another crack of thunder shook the cabin, this one so close and so loud that the glass in the single window rattled in its frame. The orc woman flinched, her good hand gripping the edge of the table so hard that her knuckles went pale beneath her green skin. "It's just the storm," Tanner said softly, threading a needle with practiced ease. "We get them like this sometimes in summer, fierce but fast." "I am not afraid of storms," she said, but her voice betrayed her. There was fear there, deep and visceral. "I am afraid of what hunts in them." Tanner paused, the needle ready in his hand. "The bounty hunters, are they still after you?" "They were following my trail when the storm hit," she admitted, her jaw tight. "But the rain will have washed away my tracks. For now, I think I am safe." He began stitching the wound, keeping his movements smooth and steady. She did not cry out, though he saw her breathing change, becoming shallow and controlled. Tough, he thought, much tougher than most soldiers he had known. "What's your name?" he asked, partly to distract her and partly because it felt wrong to be this intimate with someone whose name he did not know. She was silent for a long moment, as if debating whether to tell him. Finally, she said, "Karga, of the Stonefist clan, or I was before." She stopped, shaking her head. "Just Karga now. I'm Tanner Jenkins. I have this homestead, just me, grow some wheat, keep some chickens, trap a bit in winter, nothing special." "You were a soldier," Karga said. It was not a question. "How did you?" Tanner began, then realized how obvious it must be. The way he moved, the efficiency of his treatment, probably even the way he kept his cabin organized with military precision. "Yeah, 5 years ago. Got out after the war ended." "Did you fight orcs?" Her voice was neutral, but he heard the tension beneath it. "I did," he admitted, finishing the last stitch and tying it off. "I'm not proud of some of the things I did, the things I saw. War makes monsters of everyone involved." Karga studied him for a long moment, her amber eyes searching his face as if trying to read his soul. "Yet you help me now. Why?" It was a fair question. Tanner wrapped her arm in clean bandages, buying himself time to think. Why was he helping her? Part of it was simple human decency. He could not turn away someone who was injured and fleeing for their life. But there was more to it than that, something he could not quite name. "Because the war is over," he said finally. "Because I'm tired of hatred and killing. Because you came to my door asking for help. And I'm not the kind of man who turns away someone in need, no matter what they look like or where they come from." Another thunderclap shook the cabin, and this time Karga's reaction was stronger. She jerked backward in the chair, her eyes wide, her breathing rapid. Tanner saw real fear there, deeper than anything a mere storm could cause. "Hey," he said gently, crouching down so he was at her eye level. "What's really wrong? It's not just the storm, is it?" Karga's jaw worked, her tusks catching the firelight as she struggled with herself. Finally, she said, "The bounty hunters. Their leader. He carries storm magic, uses lightning to hurt, to kill." When I hear thunder, she closed her eyes, her good hand clenching into a fist. I see my friends dying, over and over. Tanner understood trauma. He had his own nightmares, his own triggers from the war. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and placed his hand over her clenched fist. You're safe here. I promise you, while you're under my roof, nothing is going to hurt you. She opened her eyes and looked at him, and for a moment, Tanner felt something pass between them, some wordless understanding. Then the cabin shook again, harder this time, and he heard a sound that made his blood run cold, the splintering of wood from outside, like something large had just torn through his fence. Karga heard it too. She was on her feet instantly despite her injuries, swaying only slightly. They found me, she whispered, her face going pale beneath her green skin. I led them right to you. I am sorry. I should never have. Quiet, Tanner said, his mind racing. He moved to the window and peered out through the rain-streaked glass. In the next flash of lightning, he saw them, 3 figures in dark cloaks, making their way across his yard toward the cabin. One of them, the tallest, had his hand raised, and Tanner saw electricity crackling between his fingers. How many? Karga asked, moving up beside him despite her wounds. 3 that I can see. One's a mage. Tanner was already moving, pulling his old sword down from where it hung on the wall. He had not worn it in 5 years, had hoped never to wear it again, but some skills you never forgot. Can you fight? With one arm. Not well. Karga looked around the cabin, her eyes falling on the heavy iron poker beside the fireplace. But I can try. No, Tanner said firmly. You're injured. You'll only get yourself killed. His mind was working through options, tactical assessments coming back to him like he had never left the army. There's a root cellar beneath the cabin, trapdoor under that rug. Get down there and stay quiet. I will not hide while you'll do what I tell you if you want to survive, Tanner snapped, then immediately softened his tone. Please, Karga, I know how to handle this. I know how soldiers think, how they move, but I can't fight and protect you at the same time. She stared at him for a long moment, and he saw the war playing out behind her eyes, pride versus pragmatism, the desire to fight versus the knowledge that she was in no condition to do so. Finally, she nodded once, sharp and decisive. Do not die, Tanner Jenkins, she said, her voice rough with emotion. That would be a poor way to repay your kindness. I'll do my best, he said, managing a small smile. Now go. And whatever you hear up here, don't come out until I tell you it's safe. Karga moved to the rug and pulled it aside, revealing the trapdoor beneath. She lifted it with her good arm and lowered herself down into the darkness of the root cellar. Just before she pulled the door shut, she looked up at him one last time, her amber eyes catching the firelight. Be careful, she whispered. Then the trapdoor closed, and Tanner was alone. He kicked the rug back over the trapdoor and turned to face the door just as someone pounded on it hard enough to rattle the hinges. Open up, a rough voice called out. We're looking for an orc, dangerous fugitive. We tracked her to your property. Tanner took a deep breath, settling his sword into a comfortable grip, and opened the door. The 3 bounty hunters stood on his porch, rain streaming off their cloaks. The tallest one, the mage, had cold blue eyes and a cruel twist to his mouth. The other 2 were clearly hired muscle, big men with scarred faces and hands that rested on their weapons. Evening, Tanner said, keeping his voice calm and his posture relaxed despite the sword in his hand. Bit late for a social call. We're not here to be social, the mage said. We're hunting an orc. Female, injured. We tracked her here. She's inside your cabin. There's no orc here, Tanner said flatly, just me, and I'd appreciate it if you'd get off my land. The mage's eyes narrowed. You're lying. We followed her tracks right to your door. He raised his hand, and lightning crackled around his fingers. "Now you can step aside and let us search your cabin, or we can go through you. Your choice." Tanner had faced down enemy soldiers, had stood in shield walls while arrows fell like rain, had looked death in the eye more times than he could count. These 3 bounty hunters, for all their bluster, did not frighten him. "I said there's no orc here," he repeated, his voice hardening. "And I said get off my land, I won't ask again." The mage's face twisted with anger. "Fine. We'll do this the hard way." He thrust his hand forward and a bolt of lightning shot toward Tanner, but Tanner had been watching the mage's hands, reading the signs of the coming attack. He dove to the side, and the lightning bolt missed him by inches, slamming into the cabin wall and leaving a scorched mark on the wood. The 2 hired thugs rushed forward, drawing their weapons, and Tanner found himself fighting for his life. The first one came at him with a club, swinging it in a wide arc. Tanner parried with his sword, the impact jarring his arms, then kicked out hard, catching the man in the knee. The thug went down with a howl of pain, but the second one was already on him, a knife flashing in the lightning-lit darkness. Tanner fought like he had been trained to fight efficiently, brutally, without wasted motion. He caught the knife wielder's wrist, twisted hard until he heard bones snap, then drove his elbow into the man's face. The thug staggered backward, blood streaming from his nose, but the mage was the real threat. Another bolt of lightning shot past Tanner's head, so close he felt his hair stand on end from the electrical charge. The mage was smiling now, clearly enjoying himself. "You're fast," the mage said, gathering more power in his hands. The air around him crackled with energy. "But you can't dodge forever. And when I'm done with you, I'm going to burn this cabin to the ground and roast that orc bitch alive." Rage flooded through Tanner, hot and fierce. He had promised Karga she would be safe under his roof, and he meant it. He feinted left, then dove right as another lightning bolt scorched the ground where he had been standing. The mage was powerful, but he was also arrogant, standing still to cast his spells rather than moving. Tanner closed the distance between them in 3 long strides. The mage's eyes widened in surprise, and he raised his hands to cast at point-blank range, but Tanner was already inside his guard. He drove his shoulder into the mage's chest, knocking him backward off the porch and into the mud. They grappled in the rain, Tanner struggling to keep the mage from getting his hands free to cast. Lightning crackled across the mage's skin, painful but not lethal at such close range. Tanner gritted his teeth against the pain and drove his fist into the mage's jaw once, twice, 3 times until the man went limp beneath him. The storm was starting to ease, the thunder growing more distant. Tanner looked up to see the 2 thugs limping away across his yard, disappearing into the darkness. They had clearly decided their pay was not worth tangling with him again. Tanner stood slowly, every muscle aching, and looked down at the unconscious mage. He should probably tie the man up, turn him over to the law in Millbrook. But the nearest lawman was 3 days' ride away, and Tanner had a feeling the man had friends who would come looking for him. Instead, he dragged the mage to the edge of his property, rolled him into a ditch, and took his coin purse for good measure. Blood money, probably, paid for hunting orcs. The mage would wake up in a few hours with a splitting headache and a long walk ahead of him. Tanner made his way back to the cabin, his legs shaking with adrenaline aftermath. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the thunder was just a distant rumble now. He sheathed his sword, pulled the rug aside, and opened the trapdoor. "Karga, it's safe now. They're gone." For a moment, there was only silence from the root cellar. Then Karga's voice, tight with tension, came up from the darkness. "You are unhurt, mostly. A few bruises, nothing serious. Come on up." Karga climbed out of the root cellar, her movements stiff and careful. She looked at Tanner, taking in his disheveled appearance, the scorch marks on the cabin wall, the mud and rain soaking his clothes. Then she looked toward the open door where the storm was visible beyond. "You fought all three of them?" she asked quietly. "Two ran. The third will wake up with a headache and think twice before hunting orcs again." Tanner moved to close the door, shutting out the night and the rain. "Like I said, you're safe under my roof." Karga was staring at him with an expression he could not quite read. "Why?" she asked again, more insistent this time. "Why risk your life for someone you do not know? For an orc?" Tanner met her eyes, those striking amber eyes that held so much pain and confusion. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "Because I've seen too much death and I'm tired of it. Because," he paused, searching for the right words, "because when you showed up at my door, bleeding and afraid, I didn't see an orc. I just saw someone who needed help." Karga's expression shifted, softening in a way that made her look suddenly younger, more vulnerable. "In my clan, such kindness between our peoples is unheard of. Humans kill orcs, orcs kill humans. That is how it has always been." "Then maybe it's time for that to change," Tanner said. He moved to the fireplace and began building up the fire, needing something to do with his hands. "The war is over. We can keep killing each other over old grudges, or we can try to find a better way." "You sound like my father," Karga said softly, a note of sadness in her voice. "He believed in peace between our peoples. That is why the clan cast us out. And now he is dead, killed by the same bounty hunters who hunted me." Tanner turned to look at her, seeing the grief raw and fresh on her face. "I'm sorry. That's a terrible thing to lose." "He died protecting me," Karga said, her voice breaking slightly. "Told me to run while he held them off. I wanted to stay to fight beside him, but he made me promise I would survive, would keep his dream alive." She laughed bitterly. "Some dream." "I have been running for 3 days, alone, injured, with nowhere to go and no one who will help. Until you." The fire was blazing now, filling the cabin with warmth and light. Tanner stood and faced Karga fully, seeing her clearly for the first time, not as an orc or an enemy, but as a person who had lost everything and was struggling to hold onto hope. "You can stay here," he heard himself say. "Until you heal, at least. Maybe longer if you want. I have enough food for 2, and the cabin is small but comfortable." Karga stared at him as if he had just spoken in a foreign language. "You would let me stay? Here with you? Why not? I could use the company. It gets lonely out here by myself." Tanner tried to keep his tone light, but there was truth in his words. He had been alone for 5 years, ever since he left the army. Sometimes the silence of his homestead felt like it was crushing him. "People will talk," Karga said. "If they see an orc living with a human, there will be trouble. Let them talk. My nearest neighbor is 2 miles away, and he minds his own business. As long as you don't mind hard work, there's always plenty to do on a homestead. I don't see why it won't work." Karga was quiet for a long time, her eyes searching his face as if trying to find the trick, the catch. Finally, she said, "I will stay. For now, until I heal, and I will work to earn my keep. I am strong, even injured. I can help." "Then it's settled," Tanner said, feeling an unexpected lightness in his chest. "You can sleep in the bed. I'll take the floor tonight." "No," Karga said firmly. "You have already done too much. I will take the floor." They argued about it for several minutes, both too stubborn to give in, until finally they compromised. Karga would take the bed, but only because her injuries required proper rest, and Tanner would fashion himself a decent pallet on the floor with extra blankets and furs. As they settled in for the night, the storm finally passing and leaving only the quiet patter of rain on the roof, Tanner found himself acutely aware of Karga's presence in his cabin. He could hear her breathing, slow and steady, and wondered if she was actually asleep or just pretending. "Tanner." Her voice came softly from the darkness. "Yeah, thank you, for everything. I will not forget this kindness. Get some sleep, Karga. Tomorrow you can start earning your keep." He heard what might have been a soft laugh, then silence. Tanner closed his eyes and let exhaustion pull him under. His last thought before sleep claimed him that his life had just become infinitely more complicated. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the storm having washed the world clean. Tanner woke to find Karga already up, sitting at the table and examining her bandaged arm in the early light streaming through the window. She looked better than she had the night before. The color had returned to her face, and some of the pain lines had eased. "How do you feel?" he asked, sitting up and stretching the kinks out of his back. The floor had been harder than he remembered, sore, but alive, thanks to you. Karga flexed her injured arm carefully, testing its range of motion. "The stitches are good, you have skilled hands." Tanner felt his face heat slightly at the compliment. "Army training. I've patched up worse in the field." He stood and moved to the hearth where the fire had burned down to embers overnight. "I'll make breakfast. Hope you like porridge. It's not fancy, but it's filling." "I like anything that is not raw roots and rainwater," Karga said with a faint smile. "That is what I have been eating for 3 days." As Tanner prepared breakfast, they fell into an easy conversation. Karga told him about her clan, about growing up in the Iron Peak Mountains, where the orc tribes made their homes in vast cave systems and carved fortresses. She spoke of her father's progressive views, his belief that orcs and humans could coexist peacefully, and how that belief had made them outcasts even before the bounty hunters came. In turn, Tanner told her about his own past growing up on a farm not unlike this one, losing his parents to sickness when he was 16, joining the army because he had nowhere else to go and no other skills to trade. He spoke carefully about the war, not wanting to dwell on the violence but giving her enough to understand who he had been and who he was trying to become. "So you fought my people," Karga said, her tone neutral. "Killed them, probably." "I did," Tanner admitted, unable to meet her eyes. "I'm not proud of it. We were told orcs were monsters, that we were protecting humanity. It was only later, after the war ended and I had time to think, that I realized how much of what we were told were lies, propaganda to keep the fighting going. And yet you still helped me last night. Maybe I was trying to make up for it, or maybe I just finally learned to see people as people, not as enemies." Tanner ladled porridge into 2 bowls and brought them to the table. "I can't change what I did, but I can choose how I act now." Karga took the bowl, her fingers brushing his briefly, and he felt a jolt of something he could not name. She seemed to feel it too because she pulled her hand back quickly, focusing intently on her breakfast. They ate in companionable silence, and afterward, Karga insisted on helping with the chores despite her injuries. Tanner tried to argue, but she was immovable, her jaw set in a stubborn line that reminded him of soldiers he had served with, people who would rather die than appear weak. "Fine," he relented, "but nothing heavy. You can feed the chickens and check for eggs. Think you can handle that without tearing your stitches?" "I think I can manage," Karga said dryly, a hint of amusement in her voice. Watching her move around his homestead was strange and wonderful in equal measure. The chickens scattered at first, alarmed by her unfamiliar presence, but Karga moved slowly and spoke to them in a low, soothing voice, and within minutes they were eating from her hand. She collected the eggs with careful precision, cradling them in her good arm as if they were precious treasures. Tanner worked in the vegetable garden, weeding and watering, but he found his attention drifting to Karga more often than he would have liked. There was something about the way she moved, a natural grace despite her size and strength that he found captivating. And when she smiled, a real smile, not the bitter, guarded expression she had worn when she first arrived, it transformed her entire face, making her beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with human standards of beauty, and everything to do with the pure joy of the moment. He was in trouble, he realized. Deep trouble, because he was starting to care about her in a way that went beyond simple compassion for someone in need. The days fell into a rhythm. Karga healed slowly but surely, her strength returning as the wounds closed and the burns faded to pink scars. She threw herself into the work of the homestead with an intensity that sometimes worried Tanner, as if she was trying to prove her worth through sheer effort. "You don't have to work yourself to death," he told her one afternoon as she hauled water from the well despite his protests. "You're still recovering." "I am fine," Karga insisted, though he could see the strain in her face. "I will not be a burden, I will earn my place here." "You're not a burden," Tanner said, more sharply than he intended. He softened his tone. "Look, I offered you a place to stay because I wanted to, not because I expected you to work like a draft horse. You're healing. Let yourself heal." Karga set down the water bucket and looked at him, really looked at him, and he saw confusion in her amber eyes. "Why are you so kind to me?" "I do not understand. In my experience, kindness always comes with a price." "What do you want from me, Tanner Jenkins?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Tanner knew what she was really asking. Was he being kind because he expected something in return? Because he wanted to use her somehow. "I don't want anything," he said honestly, "except maybe a friend, someone to talk to, someone who understands what it's like to be on the outside looking in." He gestured around at the homestead. "I chose to live out here, away from towns and people, because I don't fit in anymore. The war changed me, made me see things differently. And now I'm caught between two worlds, too sympathetic to orcs for most humans, but still human in a world where that makes me the enemy to your people." Karga's expression shifted, the suspicion fading to something softer. "I understand that feeling, of not belonging. My father's ideals made us outcasts among our own kind, and now that he is gone, I have nowhere to return to. The clan will not take me back. They will see me as tainted, corrupted by my father's human-loving ways." "Then maybe we're both outcasts," Tanner said. "And maybe that's okay. Maybe we can build something new here. A place where it doesn't matter if you're human or orc, just that you're willing to work hard and treat each other with respect. A place where an orc and a human can live together without hatred or fear," Karga said slowly, as if testing the words. "My father would have liked that idea." "Then let's make it happen. For him and for us." Karga smiled then, one of those real smiles that lit up her whole face, and Tanner felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. He was definitely in trouble. As summer deepened toward fall, their relationship shifted in subtle ways. They worked side by side during the day, and in the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk for hours, sharing stories and dreams and fears. Karga told him about orc culture, about the intricate honor codes and the clan structures, about the music and art that humans never saw because they only encountered orcs on the battlefield. Tanner shared his own stories, his childhood on the farm, the friends he had lost in the war, his dreams of building a life that meant something beyond violence and survival. He found himself opening up to her in ways he had never opened up to anyone, and she listened with an attention that made him feel truly heard for the first time in years. They were careful never to touch more than necessary, both acutely aware of the lines they were dancing around. But sometimes, their hands would brush when passing tools or plates of food, and Tanner would feel that same electric jolt, that same pull of attraction that he tried desperately to ignore, because acknowledging it would complicate everything. Humans and orcs did not fall in love. It was forbidden by both societies, taboo on a level that went bone deep. And even if they could somehow overcome that, what kind of future could they have? They would be outcasts forever, hunted by those who saw their love as an abomination. But the heart, Tanner was learning, did not care about logic or consequences. It wanted what it wanted, and what his heart wanted was growing clearer every day. The first frost came in late September, coating the world in white and marking the transition into fall. Tanner and Karga worked together to prepare the homestead for winter, harvesting the last of the vegetables, preserving food, reinforcing the cabin against the coming cold. Karga's arm had healed completely, leaving only a thin scar, and she was now working at full strength, which was considerable. "You're as strong as two men," Tanner said one day as he watched her lift a beam that would have taken him and Marcus together to move. "Maybe three." "Orc strength," Karga said with a shrug. "It is normal for my people, your kind are, fragile, no offense. None taken. I've seen what orcs can do in battle. I have a healthy respect for your strength." They were working on reinforcing the chicken coop against winter predators, and the close quarters meant they were working shoulder to shoulder, their bodies almost touching. Tanner found himself hyper-aware of her presence, of the heat radiating from her skin, of the way she smelled like earth and wood smoke and something uniquely her. "Tanner," Karga said softly, and he realized she had stopped working and was looking at him. "I need to tell you something." His heart started beating faster. "What is it?" "I have been here for almost 3 months now. My wounds are healed. I am strong again. By rights, I should leave, find my own way, build my own life. That was the arrangement. I would stay until I healed." Tanner felt his chest tighten. He had known this moment was coming, had been dreading it even as he knew it was inevitable. "You don't have to leave. You can stay as long as you want." "That is the problem," Karga said, her amber eyes intense. "I want to stay. I want to stay so much that it frightens me. Because I know why I want to stay, and I know it is wrong." "Why is it wrong?" Tanner asked, though he knew the answer. "Because I am falling in love with you," Karga said, the words tumbling out in a rush, "and that is forbidden. Impossible. An orc and a human cannot. We cannot." She broke off, turning away from him, her shoulders tense. Tanner stood frozen, his mind reeling. She had said it. She had put into words the thing they had both been dancing around for months. And now that it was out in the open, he could not pretend anymore, could not hide behind excuses and rationalization. "Karga," he said, his voice rough. "Look at me." She turned slowly, and he saw fear in her eyes. Fear of rejection, fear of what this meant, fear of the future. He understood because he felt it too. "I'm falling in love with you too," he said. "Have been for weeks now, maybe longer. And you're right, it's impossible and forbidden and probably the stupidest thing I've ever done. But I can't help it. I don't want to help it." "We cannot be together," Karga said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "Your people would reject you. Mine would kill me if they found out. We would be hunted, hated, never safe." "I know," Tanner said. "I've thought about all of that, and you know what? I don't care. I've spent 5 years living a half-life, going through the motions, not really living. But these past 3 months with you, I've felt alive again. Happy. Like my life means something." "Tanner, I'm not saying it will be easy," he continued, stepping closer to her. "It will probably be the hardest thing either of us ever does, but I think it will be worth it. I think you're worth it." Karga looked up at him, and he saw the war playing out behind her eyes, desire versus duty, love versus fear. "What if I hurt you? Orcs are stronger than humans." "In passion I might." "You won't," Tanner said with absolute certainty. "You have perfect control. I've seen you handle eggs without breaking them, work with tools that require delicate precision. You won't hurt me. What if the bounty hunters come back? What if more come? I would be putting you in constant danger. I can handle bounty hunters, and I'd rather live in danger with you than in safety alone. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. Her skin was warm, her tusks smooth beneath his fingers. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch, and he heard her breath catch. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. "Tell me this is wrong and I'll stop. We'll go back to being friends, to pretending there's nothing between us. Just say the word." Karga opened her eyes, and what he saw there made his heart soar. "Do not stop," she said. "Please, Tanner, I have wanted this for so long, wanted you." He kissed her then, gently at first, mindful of her tusks and the differences between them. But she responded with a hunger that matched his own, her arms coming around him and pulling him close. And the kiss deepened into something fierce and desperate and absolutely perfect. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tanner rested his forehead against hers and laughed, a sound of pure joy. "So what now?" he asked. "Now we figure it out together," Karga said, smiling through the tears that streaked her face. "We build the life my father dreamed of. A life where love matters more than race or clan or all the stupid rules that keep people apart." "I like the sound of that," Tanner said, kissing her again, softer this time, savoring it. They spent the rest of that day in a sort of daze, moving through the chores but constantly finding excuses to touch each other, a hand on a shoulder, fingers brushing, standing closer than necessary. It was as if a dam had broken, and all the feelings they had been holding back came flooding out. That night they sat by the fire, Karga curled against Tanner's side, his arm around her shoulders. It felt right in a way that defied explanation, like two puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. "Are you afraid?" Karga asked softly. "Terrified," Tanner admitted. "But also more sure about this than I've been about anything in my life." "I feel the same," Karga said. She turned to look up at him, her amber eyes serious. "I will protect you, Tanner Jenkins, with my life if necessary. No one will hurt you while I draw breath." "The feeling's mutual," Tanner said, tightening his arm around her. "We protect each other, that's how this works." "Partners," Karga said, testing the word. "Partners," Tanner agreed, "in everything." They stayed like that until the fire burned low, wrapped in each other and in the warmth of new love, neither wanting to break the spell. When they finally went to bed together now, in the same bed, holding each other in the darkness, Tanner felt a peace he had not known was possible. The winter came hard and fast that year, snow piling up around the cabin in white drifts that made travel impossible for weeks at a time. But Tanner and Karga did not mind. They had everything they needed: food, warmth, and each other. They settled into a domestic rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Karga proved to be an excellent cook once she learned to work with human ingredients, creating dishes that blended orc and human cuisines in surprising ways. Tanner taught her to read and write in common, and she taught him the basics of Orcish, though he struggled with the guttural sounds. In the evenings, they would make love by the firelight, learning each other's bodies with patience and care. Karga had been right that she was stronger, but she was also gentle when she needed to be, and Tanner learned how to touch her in ways that made her gasp and tremble. Their physical connection was intense and passionate, a perfect complement to the emotional bond they were building. But it was not all easy. There were moments of doubt, times when the weight of what they were doing, defying every social norm and taboo, seemed too heavy to bear. Karga had nightmares about her father, about the bounty hunters, about being discovered and torn away from Tanner. And Tanner wrestled with guilt over his past, over the orcs he had killed in the war, wondering if he deserved this happiness. You cannot change the past, Karga told him one night after he woke from a nightmare, his face wet with tears. You can only choose who you are now. And now, you are the man who saved my life. The man who loves me despite every reason not to. That is who you are, Tanner, not the soldier who followed orders, not the killer. This man here with me, that is your truth. Her words helped as they always did. She had a way of cutting through his spirals of guilt and self-recrimination, grounding him in the present moment. And he did the same for her when her own demons came calling, holding her through the nightmares and reminding her that she was safe, that she was loved, that she was home. Spring came slowly, the snow melting in patches to reveal the brown earth beneath. As the world thawed, Tanner knew they needed to make some decisions. They could not hide forever. Eventually, someone would come calling Marcus, checking on him maybe, or traders passing through. They needed to decide how they would handle the inevitable discovery of their relationship. We could run, Karga suggested one morning as they worked in the garden, preparing the soil for planting. Go deeper into the wilderness, build a new life where no one knows us. We could, Tanner agreed. But I don't want to spend my life running, and I don't want to hide what we have. Your father believed orcs and humans could live together in peace. Maybe we can prove he was right. Maybe we can be an example. An example that might get us killed, Karga pointed out, but there was no heat in her words. You are an idealist, Tanner Jenkins. I learned from the best, he said, leaning over to kiss her cheek. Your father was an idealist too, and you carry his dream. So do I now. Karga smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. I wish he could have met you. He would have liked you. I wish I could have met him too, to thank him for raising such an incredible woman. The decision was made for them in early April when Marcus showed up at the homestead, riding his old mule and carrying a sack of supplies. Tanner saw him coming from a distance and felt his stomach drop. This was it, the moment of truth. Karga, he called into the cabin, we have a visitor. My neighbor, Marcus. Karga appeared in the doorway, her face calm but her eyes showing her tension. What do you want to do? Tell him the truth, Tanner said. See what happens. If he reacts badly, we'll deal with it, but I'm tired of hiding. Marcus rode up to the cabin and dismounted, his weathered face breaking into a smile. Tanner, good to see you made it through the winter. I was starting to worry when he stopped, his eyes going wide as he caught sight of Karga. What in the name of Marcus? This is Karga, Tanner said, moving to stand beside her. He took her hand, a deliberate gesture that Marcus could not possibly misunderstand. She's living with me. We're together. Marcus stared at them, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Finally, he managed together, as in we're in love, Tanner said firmly. I know how it looks. I know what people will say, but I don't care. She's the most important person in my life, and I'm not going to hide that. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes moving between Tanner and Karga, taking in their linked hands the way they stood close together. Then he said, Well, I'll be damned. If you have a problem with it, Tanner began, but Marcus held up a hand. Hold on, let me finish. I was going to say, I'll be damned, but good for you. Life's too short to be lonely, and if you found someone who makes you happy, then to hell with what anyone else thinks. Tanner felt like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. You're okay with this? I'm not sure I'd go that far, Marcus said honestly. It's going to take some getting used to, seeing a human and an orc together. But you're a good man, Tanner, and I trust your judgment. If you say she's worth it, then I believe you. He turned to Karga, who had been watching the exchange with cautious hope. Nice to meet you, Karga. Any friend of Tanner's is a friend of mine. Karga bowed her head slightly, a gesture of respect. Thank you, Marcus. Your acceptance means more than you know. Don't thank me yet, Marcus said with a wry smile. I'm not the one you need to worry about. Once word gets out, and it will get out, things like this always do. You're going to have bigger problems. There are folks in Millbrook who won't take kindly to this arrangement. And if any orc clans find out, they'll see it as a betrayal. We know, Tanner said. We've talked about it. We're prepared to face whatever comes. Then you're braver than I am, Marcus said. He hefted his sack of supplies. I brought you some seeds for spring planting. Tomatoes, beans, some herbs. Figured you could use them. They invited Marcus to stay for lunch, and he accepted, the atmosphere gradually relaxing as they ate and talked. Marcus was full of news from Millbrook, who had married, who had died, the latest gossip and scandals. It was mundane, normal conversation, and somehow that made it even more precious. Marcus was treating them like any couple, not like some forbidden abomination. When Marcus finally left, he shook Tanner's hand and then, after a moment's hesitation, shook Karga's as well. You two take care of each other, he said. And if you need help, you know where to find me. I may not understand it, but I'll stand by you. Thank you, Marcus, Tanner said, his voice thick with emotion. That means everything. They watched Marcus ride away, and then Karga turned to Tanner, her eyes shining. He accepted us. I did not think it was possible, but he accepted us. Not everyone will, Tanner warned. He's a good man, but there will be others who aren't so understanding. I know, Karga said. But this is a start. If one human can accept us, perhaps others can too. Perhaps we really can build the world my father dreamed of. The rest of spring and into summer, they worked the homestead together, and slowly, carefully, they began to interact more with the outside world. Marcus brought other neighbors by occasionally, always warning them first about Karga's presence. The reactions were mixed. Some refused to come near the homestead. Others were cautiously accepting, and a few, like Marcus, became genuine friends. Word did get out, as Marcus had predicted. Tanner started noticing hostile looks when he went into Millbrook for supplies, and there were a few confrontations with men who thought he was a traitor to his race. But there were also surprises. A widow woman who told him she thought it was romantic. A young couple who asked if they could visit because they were fascinated by orc culture. A priest who quoted scripture about love conquering all. The world, Tanner was learning, was more complicated than the simple binaries of war had suggested. People were capable of both great cruelty and unexpected kindness, sometimes in the same breath. The real test came in midsummer when a delegation from the Stonefist clan arrived at the homestead. There were 5 of them, all warriors, all heavily armed. Tanner saw them coming and immediately moved to stand between them and the cabin, his hand on his sword. State your business, he called out, his voice hard. The lead warrior, a massive orc with gray streaks in his black hair, dismounted and approached slowly, hands visible and empty of weapons. We are here for Karga, daughter of Groth. We have heard she lives here. We wish to speak with her. Karga emerged from the cabin, and Tanner heard her sharp intake of breath. Tharg, she said, her voice a mixture of emotions. You were my father's friend. Why have you come? Because the clan has need of you, Tharg said. Because we were wrong to cast you and your father out. Because his ideas, which we mocked, may have been right all along. Tanner listened, tense and ready to fight if necessary, as Tharg explained. The Stonefist clan had been struggling since Karga and her father were exiled. Raids from human settlements had increased, and without Groth's diplomatic skills, the situation was escalating toward open war. The clan chieftain had sent Tharg to find Karga and ask her to return, to take up her father's work as a bridge between the two peoples. They want me to be a diplomat. Karga asked, incredulous. After they cast me out, after they let my father die, we cannot undo the past, Tharg said, his voice heavy with regret. But we can try to build a better future. Your father believed orcs and humans could live in peace. You are living proof that he was right. You and your human, he gestured at Tanner. You could be the example we need, the bridge that prevents war. Karga looked at Tanner and he saw the conflict in her eyes. This was everything her father had wanted, a chance to make his dream real. But it would mean leaving the safety of their homestead, putting themselves in the middle of tensions that could explode into violence at any moment. What do you think? She asked him softly. Tanner thought about it carefully. They could say no, could stay here in their small bubble of happiness and ignore the larger world. But that was not who they were. They had both been fighters in their own ways, and this was a fight worth having. I think your father would want you to try, he said finally. And I think we can do it, together. Karga nodded slowly, then turned back to Tharg. I will come, but on my terms. Tanner comes with me. We work together as partners or not at all, and the clan must accept our relationship. If they want peace between orcs and humans, they need to start by accepting the love between this human and this orc. Tharg looked uncomfortable, but he nodded. I will argue your case to the chieftain, but I cannot promise anything. Then we will make him understand, Karga said with a fierce determination that made Tanner's heart swell with pride. We will show him, show all of them, that love is stronger than hatred, that unity is possible. It took 3 weeks of negotiation, but eventually, the Stonefist clan agreed to Karga's terms. Tanner and Karga would come to the clan's territory and work as joint diplomats, mediating between orc and human settlements. In exchange, the clan would publicly accept their relationship and defend it against any who challenged it. The work was hard and often dangerous. There were humans who saw Tanner as a traitor and tried to attack him. There were orcs who saw Karga as corrupted and challenged her to combat. But slowly, painfully, they made progress. They negotiated trade agreements, settled border disputes, and most importantly, they brought people together to see each other as individuals rather than as enemies. Their relationship became a symbol, proof that the divide between races was not insurmountable. Young orcs and humans began to question the old prejudices, and while change was slow, it was real. 2 years after that summer day when Karga had stumbled into his cabin during a storm, Tanner and Karga stood before a mixed gathering of humans and orcs in a neutral meadow between territories. Marcus was there, along with the Millbrook priest. Tharg was there, along with the Stonefist chieftain, and dozens of others from both sides who had come to witness history. We gather here today, the priest said, his voice carrying across the meadow, to join these two souls in marriage, a human and an orc, choosing love over hatred, unity over division. Let this union be a symbol of what is possible when we choose to see each other not as enemies, but as kin. Tanner looked at Karga, stunning in a dress that blended human and orc styles, her tusks adorned with silver rings, her amber eyes shining with tears of joy. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, the storm, the fear, the slow building of trust and love. He thought about how she had changed his life, given him purpose and hope, and a future he had never imagined possible. I love you, he said, the words simple but weighted with everything he felt. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Karga said, her voice strong and clear. You saved my life, Tanner Jenkins, and then you gave me a reason to live. I am yours now and always. They kissed as the assembled crowd erupted in cheers, orc war cries mingling with human applause in a sound that had never been heard before in all of history. It was messy and complicated and far from perfect, but it was real. It was progress. It was hope. Later, at the feast that followed, Tanner stood with Karga at his side and looked out at the mixed gathering orcs and humans eating together, laughing together, tentatively building friendships. It was everything they had worked for, everything her father had dreamed of. "He would be proud of you," Tanner said softly, squeezing Karga's hand. "Of us?" "I know," Karga said, her eyes glistening with tears. "I feel him here with us. His dream is alive, Tanner. We are making it real." "We are," Tanner agreed. "Together." As the sun set over the meadow, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Tanner reflected on how much had changed since that stormy night 2 years ago. He had been alone then, going through the motions of life without really living. Now he had love, purpose, and a future that stretched out before him full of possibility. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be more challenges, more people who opposed what they represented. But they would face it together, as they had faced everything with courage, determination, and a love that refused to be bound by the narrow definitions of the past. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and Tanner smiled, thinking of that first night, of how thunder had brought Karga into his life. Karga must have been thinking the same thing because she leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, and whispered, "Do you remember that storm?" "I'll never forget it," Tanner said. "Best storm of my life." "Mine too," Karga said. She looked up at him, her beautiful face full of love and joy. "Shall we go home?" "Where's home?" Tanner asked, genuinely curious. They had been traveling so much, working as diplomats, that they no longer had a permanent residence. "Wherever you are," Karga said simply. "That is home. That will always be home." They said their goodbyes to the celebration and slipped away into the twilight, walking hand in hand toward whatever future awaited them. Behind them, the sounds of the feast continued, a harmony of two cultures learning to live as one. And above them, the stars began to appear, one by one, constant and eternal, like the love that bound them together. Years passed, and their legend grew. The human and the orc who had defied convention and brought peace to the frontier became a story told around fires, a tale that inspired other unlikely couples to follow their hearts. They had 3 children, 2 daughters, and a son, each a perfect blend of their parents' best qualities, symbols of a new generation that would not know the hatred and division of the past. Tanner's homestead, where it all began, became a gathering place for those seeking to bridge the divide between species. They expanded it over the years, building additional structures to house visitors and host councils. It became known as Peace Hollow, a name that started as a joke but stuck, because it captured what they had built: a hollow in the hostility, a place where peace could take root and grow. On quiet nights when the work was done and their children were asleep, Tanner and Karga would sit by the fire in their original cabin, now the heart of a much larger complex, and remember that first night. The storm, the fear, the desperate hope. The moment when 2 people from different worlds reached across the divide and found each other. "You ever regret it?" Karga asked one such night, her head pillowed on his lap as he ran his fingers through her hair. "Choosing this life, choosing me?" "Not for a single second," Tanner said without hesitation. "You gave me everything I never knew I needed: purpose, love, family. A reason to believe the world can be better." "Good," Karga said, smiling up at him, "because I am not giving you back." "I would not go even if you tried to send me away," Tanner said, leaning down to kiss her. "I am yours, Karga, forever." "Forever," Karga echoed, the word a promise and a prayer. Outside, thunder rumbled across the valley, a summer storm rolling in from the mountains. Tanner felt Karga tense slightly. She still had moments where thunder brought back painful memories, but then she relaxed, settling more comfortably against him. "It is just weather," she murmured. "Just a storm. Nothing to fear." But Tanner knew it was more than that. The thunder was a reminder of where they had started, of the night that changed everything. It was a reminder that from chaos and fear, something beautiful could emerge. That love could flourish in the most unlikely circumstances. That hope was always possible, even in the darkest moments. The thunder rolled on, and Tanner held his wife close, listening to the rain begin to fall on the roof of their home. It was a good sound, a cleansing sound, washing away the past and nurturing the future. And in that moment, surrounded by the evidence of their life together, Tanner knew a profound and simple truth. He was exactly where he was meant to be, with exactly who he was meant to be with. The storm had brought them together, and nothing, not prejudice, not hatred, not fear, would ever tear them apart. They had built something worth fighting for, worth living for. A love that transcended boundaries, a family that embodied hope, a legacy that would outlast them both, rippling outward through generations, changing hearts and minds, proving that the world could be better, kinder, more accepting. All because one stormy night, an orc woman stumbled into a human man's cabin, and instead of turning her away, he chose kindness. He chose compassion. He chose love. And in doing so, he chose to change the world. As the storm raged outside and the fire crackled in the hearth, Tanner and Karga held each other close, their hearts beating in synchrony, their souls intertwined. They had faced trials and triumphs, joy and sorrow, but through it all, they had faced it together. And they would continue to face whatever came together for all the days of their lives. The thunder shook the cabin one last time, a cosmic affirmation of their journey, and then the storm began to ease, the rain gentling to a soft patter. In the quiet that followed, Karga pressed against Tanner and whispered the words that had started it all, now transformed from a moment of fear to a declaration of eternal love. "Don't move," she said softly. "Stay right here with me, always." "Always," Tanner promised, kissing the top of her head. "I'm not going anywhere. This is where I belong." And so they stayed, wrapped in each other's arms in the cabin where their story began, surrounded by the life they had built together. Outside, the world continued to turn, to change, to slowly heal from centuries of conflict. But inside, in the warm glow of the firelight, two souls rested in the perfect certainty of their love. The storm had brought them together. Their courage had kept them together. And their love would sustain them through whatever storms lay ahead, for the rest of their days and beyond, into legend, into myth, into the eternal testament that love, true love, knows no boundaries and conquers all.